The sheer heaven and rubbing alcohol transfer technique has become really well known with photographs all around the world, but we're just recently discovering that that's not the only trick and transfers that sheer heaven can do. We also have found out that it will transfer an ink drawing and it will transfer an ink drawing in color. So that's what I'm going to show you right now, right in front of your very eyes. And the first thing I'm doing is I'm cutting a piece of scrap sheer heaven. It's nice and expensive, so we don't waste even our scraps. And I'm going to place it over this branch right here, which is what I'm going to want to make a transfer of. The ink pens that we'll be using to do this are the Pitt Artist pens. And this is a Moleskine sketchbook art journal. And so we don't use Sharpies and so on because they bleed through this page of this type of journal. Sharpies will work with this technique, just not in a Moleskine sketchbook. So the first thing that I'm going to do here is I'm going to find amongst all of my Pitt pens a dark brown to make the stem of this branch. Originally the branch was drawn and painted with watercolor pencils. But since we're going to work with markers now, I'm going to use 2 tones of brown. I'm going to use a dark for the outline and a lighter orangey brown to fill it in so it'll show up. Look a little bit like a shaded branch. Okay, and next with the leaves, in the colored pencil, we had the leaves as shaded in 2-tone here. And we can't do that so much with these markers. We can blend them a little bit, but not a whole lot. So I'm going to try to make that effect similar by first brush painting every leaf with the lighter green Pitt pen. These brush tips are wonderful. They have a really, really nice feel. You can make the tiniest of lines with them, and yet they'll flex and give you a nice fill line as well. Okay, now to give that some shading, or fake shading, I go to a darker green right here and just do my outlining along the edges of each leaf. You can probably tell I've drawn a lot of leaves in my life. So I sort of do them automatically. Okay, once that's done, we could go ahead and make the transfer from this. But because I'm thinking of adding some black line drawings to the page where this branch is going to go, I'm going to make it itself a little dramatic by doing an outline of each leaf in black. And this is not a brush tip, this is a fine tip. Still a Pitt Artist pen. Okay, so we have a sketch here of tracing, basically, of the drawing of the branch from the page. And now the magic is going to begin. I'm removing the tape removable tape, which is why I can remove it, that I held this in place with while painting. And now I'm going to go to a blank page in the journal. I usually have my practice pages on the back. And this will have to be in reverse, of course. It's a transfer. So I'm going to put this branch right onto this page of the journal and then continue the page with some other kind of design, probably. Okay, the first thing that I want to do when I'm going to transfer is I want to minimize how much of the sheer heaven is left around the edge. Every transfer will make a small halo from this background area, and as it dries it disappears. But if you do another transfer nearby, you don't want to transfer over where the other one was. So I always just try to minimize it. So this is going to go on the page like this. What I'm going to do off camera, because I don't want to spray alcohol on my camera, is I'm going to hold this piece as carefully as I can by somewhere that the ink is not, and I am going to spritz it with rubbing alcohol, which I have in an old hairspray bottle. And the reason I use an old hairspray bottle is because the mist is really nice and fine. And I'm going to spritz this under a light so that I can tell about the coverage of the alcohol. You should get a total coverage that has a glassy gleam to it, and I hope that that is showing up in the video. And I might, you hold it under a light, you can tell if you have any dry areas. I might give it one more, just two more, just to make sure. Now you must handle it really carefully because you have actually activated the ink now. You've sort of liquefied the ink and it's ready to go on the page. You set it down carefully right where you want it, and you smooth it with your finger. I'm not applying much pressure. I don't want this shear having to slip around. And this is a Teflon bone folder. Any bone folder will do, but just softly. You just want to make sure that you have contact with every bit of the drawing on the page. And then you simply lift it off. I'm going to get it as close as I can so that you can see the magic of this. You notice the shear heaven is coming away clean. The drawing is transferred. The painting, I guess we should say, because it's in color, is transferred beautifully to the page. You can just imagine the potential and the possibilities of this. You can take drawings and paintings that you have made in any context, and you can rearrange them into new compositions and new drawings and use them on the front of greeting cards and in collages, whatever you would like. For those not familiar with the transfer process, there is a video about it too, and there is a link on my website, creatit.com, that gives you a step-by-step publication about it. But what you need to know basically is that your alcohol has to be the crummy kind, the 70%. If you buy the extra expensive 90% alcohol, it dries too fast. You will not get as nice of a transfer. And the other thing you need to know is that whatever you're transferring to has to be porous. It can't be polymer clay. It can't be acrylic gesso. It can't be anything that will not absorb. What it can be, fabric, papers of all kinds, watercolor papers, tissue papers, rice papers. You notice that you don't have any kind of bleeding of this ink at all. That's because part of the surface of the shear heaven is holding the ink together, even after it's been transferred. So this is one heck of a thing. Magic, we think.